The wind was relentless that night, a mournful symphony that swept over the endless white plains and battered the fragile wooden walls of a secluded cabin nestled in the heart of Montana's wilderness. Keanu Reeves had come to these mountains in search of solace after a tragedy that had shattered his world. Each gust of wind was a reminder of the past, a past where warmth and laughter had filled his life, now replaced by silence and solitude. Inside the cabin, the fire struggled against the bitter cold. The glow from the hearth provided only a meager comfort, its light dancing on the worn surfaces and echoing the flickering hope in Keanu's heart. Lost in his thoughts, he sat on an old wooden chair, a book resting open on his lap, though his eyes rarely strayed to its words. Instead, his mind replayed memories of a fateful night that had led him to flee the chaos of his former life. He often wondered, in the dead hours of the night, "Why am I still here?" The silence of the mountains seemed to magnify every doubt, every question of worth and purpose. But tonight, the vast isolation was interrupted by something unexpected. A sound that was not the howl of the wind or the crackle of burning wood, but a feeble, almost imperceptible groan. It was a sound that hinted at suffering, a cry for help amid the storm's fury. Keanu's heart stirred as he listened intently. This was no hallucination born of loneliness. It was real, and it beckoned him to act. Keanu rose slowly from his chair, his eyes narrowing in determination. The mysterious sound grew fainter, blending with the cacophony of the winter tempest. Grabbing a battered lantern from a side table, he made his way to the cabin's door. The cold that greeted him was unforgiving, slicing through the fabric of his worn coat as he stepped outside. Every footstep was a battle against the deep snow that threatened to swallow him whole. Yet, an inner voice, a blend of instinct and compassion, urged him forward. As he trudged through the swirling flakes, his lantern's glow danced erratically on the pristine surface, revealing strange marks etched in the snow, a series of drag marks, almost as if something had been pulled unwillingly across the frozen ground. With each step, the marks led him further from the sanctuary of the cabin into the heart of the storm. The wind whispered warnings, its icy breath urging him to retreat, yet the faint, pained sounds of life compelled him to continue. Keanu's journey felt both surreal and charged with urgency. Memories of his isolation and the loss that had haunted him for months mingled with the stark reality of the present. The wind, the snow, and the dim light transformed the landscape into a realm of shadows and hidden secrets. He wondered what force could have left such mysterious traces in the snow, a mystery that, unknowingly, was about to intertwine with his own fate. After what felt like an eternity, Keanu's lantern revealed a shivering, almost ghostly figure in the distance. A dog, its body curled up against the biting cold. The animal's fur was matted and partially frozen, its eyes barely open as if in a daze of pain and exhaustion. The dog let out a weak growl, a sound so frail it could have been mistaken for the wind's lament. "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" Keanu called softly, his voice trembling with both caution and empathy. The dog's response was minimal, a feeble whimper and a subtle shift in its stance. As Keanu stepped closer, he noticed something unusual. The dog wasn't lying on a random patch of snow. It was positioned deliberately over a small depression, as though it were protecting something beneath it. With gentle care, Keanu knelt beside the animal. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small piece of jerky, a simple snack he carried for moments like this. "I just want to help," he murmured, extending the food towards the dog. The animal hesitated for a moment before its hunger overcame its wariness, and it began to nibble cautiously at the offering. Encouraged by this small sign of trust, Keanu inched closer. He wrapped an old, worn blanket around the dog to shield it from the ruthless cold and, with a delicate touch, started to clear away the snow that obscured the mystery beneath its body. His fingers, numb from the biting cold, worked with determination, driven by an inexplicable need to uncover what the dog had been guarding so desperately. As the last remnants of snow were cleared away, a gasp escaped his lips. Beneath the shivering dog lay a small cavity carved into the snow, a tiny nest cradling two fragile lives. Peering inside, Keanu discovered two baby rabbits, their bodies almost translucent against the stark white snow, their tiny paws trembling as if in a perpetual state of shock. The rabbits' eyes were barely open, and each breath they took was a testament to their struggle for survival. "My God!" Keanu whispered, his voice a mix of astonishment and sorrow. The sight of these vulnerable creatures, hidden away beneath the protective body of the dog, stirred emotions he had long thought buried beneath layers of solitude. The dog, though weakened, had exhibited an act of extraordinary selflessness. It had sacrificed its own comfort and strength to shield these helpless lives from the relentless fury of nature. Carrying the weight of this revelation, Keanu knew time was of the essence. The storm showed no sign of relenting, and every passing minute could mean the difference between life and death for the tiny beings now entrusted to his care. With renewed urgency, he carefully scooped up the baby rabbits, wrapping them snugly in his scarf, the only barrier between fragile life and the merciless cold. Realizing that the dog too was in critical condition, Keanu resolved to bring both the animal and the hidden charges back to the safety of his cabin. The trek back was grueling. The snow's depth increased with every step, and the wind seemed to conspire with the storm to halt his progress. Yet, the silent pleas of the defenseless animals propelled him forward. Each step was an affirmation of his commitment, not just to saving these lives, but to salvaging a part of himself that he feared was forever lost. Upon returning to the cabin, Keanu quickly set about creating a haven amidst the desolation. He arranged a small space near the fireplace, laying out all the makeshift blankets he could find. The dog was carefully placed on a thick rug, its eyes heavy with exhaustion yet reflecting a glimmer of trust. The baby rabbits, now snug in a makeshift basket lined with soft cloth, were positioned close enough to feel the warmth of the hearth. "Stay with me," Keanu whispered, almost as a promise, as he worked diligently to revive the shivering dog. He fetched a worn first aid kit and prepared a gentle remedy, a concoction of warm milk and softened breadcrumbs. With a clean syringe salvaged from the kit, he administered the warm liquid to the rabbits, coaxing them into taking sips of life-giving nourishment. The dog, meanwhile, was given every bit of care that Keanu could muster. He massaged its aching paws, whispered soft words of encouragement, and even used a spoon to drip tiny amounts of soup into its mouth. The battle against nature's cold was not just external. It was a fight for hope, for redemption, and for the rekindling of a spirit that had long lain dormant. As the night wore on, the cabin transformed from a cold refuge into a sanctuary of perseverance and quiet determination. Outside, the storm raged with unabated fury, but inside, a delicate balance of warmth and willpower emerged. Keanu's eyes never left the trio before him: the stoic, suffering dog and the tiny, hopeful rabbits. In them, he saw a reflection of his own battle against despair. Time seemed to blur as the hours passed. In the darkness of that long night, every soft sound, every murmur of life, became a testament to the resilience of the heart. At times, Keanu felt overwhelmed by the enormity of his task. The dog's labored breaths and the rabbit's tentative movements were constant reminders of the fragility of life in the harsh winter. Yet, amid the struggle, small victories began to surface. The rabbits, though still weak, started to show signs of strength. One of them, after several attempts, managed to lift its tiny head, its eyes focusing with a spark of determination that belied its size. Keanu's heart swelled with a cautious hope. In that brief moment, the quiet cabin filled with a sense of promise, one that whispered of recovery and renewal. "Hang in there, little ones," he murmured, as he carefully continued his ministrations. Every action was an act of defiance against the cold, a silent rebellion against the darkness that had once consumed him. He began to realize that perhaps, in saving these creatures, he was also salvaging a piece of his own shattered soul. At one point during the night, as the storm's fury seemed to reach a crescendo, the dog stirred. A low, almost imperceptible sound, a soft whimper that carried the weight of both pain and gratitude, echoed in the room. Keanu leaned in, gently massaging the dog's frostbitten paws, feeling the tremors of life beneath the surface. "You've come so far," he whispered, his tone as gentle as the flickering flames that danced before him. "I won't let you go." It was not just an assurance to the animal, but a silent promise to himself. A vow that as long as life stirred in even the smallest form, there was hope yet to be found. The night was long, and every minute tested their limits. Yet, in the quiet hours before dawn, a subtle transformation began. The dog, though still fragile, managed a tentative wag of its tail, a sign that it was fighting back against the relentless cold. The baby rabbits, cradled in their little basket, started to nudge closer to the warmth, their soft whiskers twitching with renewed energy. As the first light of dawn crept through the narrow windows of the cabin, it painted the interior in a gentle, golden hue. The long night of trials had not been without its toll, but it had also borne witness to the resurgence of life. Keanu, though exhausted beyond measure, allowed himself a small, grateful smile as he observed the subtle improvements. The dog's eyes, once dull with pain, now sparkled with a quiet determination, and the rabbit's movements grew more confident with each passing moment. The storm had abated to a distant murmur, and in the stillness of early morning, the world outside looked transformed, a landscape cleansed by the fury of nature, now blanketed in a soft, hopeful light. Keanu carefully unwrapped the animals from their makeshift bedding, ensuring they were comfortable before he set out to seek further help. Determined to secure the welfare of the little ones, Keanu decided that the baby rabbits needed professional care. He gently wrapped them in a warm cloth and made his way to the nearby wildlife shelter, a modest establishment known for its compassionate care of injured and abandoned animals. There, a kind biologist received the fragile creatures with empathy and assurance. "They will recover," the biologist promised, "and once strong enough, they'll be returned to the wild." Yet, for all the tenderness shown to the rabbits, it was the dog that occupied Keanu's thoughts. He named the valiant animal Guardian, for it had not only shielded the vulnerable lives beneath it but had also, in a way, guarded Keanu's own battered spirit. Over the next few days, as the winter slowly began to ease its grip, Keanu stayed close by the cabin to nurse Guardian back to health. Every day brought small improvements, a firmer step here, a less labored breath there, and with each sign of recovery, Keanu felt a stirring of hope that had long been dormant. Guardian, now a symbol of bravery and self-sacrifice, followed Keanu loyally, their bond deepening with every shared sunrise and whispered word of encouragement. In the quiet moments by the fireplace, as Guardian rested its head on Keanu's lap, the man reflected on how unexpected connections can mend even the deepest of wounds. What began as an act of rescuing a stray in the dead of winter had blossomed into a journey of redemption, a journey where life, in its most vulnerable forms, illuminated the path back to purpose. Weeks turned into a quiet routine of healing and introspection. The once barren cabin transformed into a haven of light and life. Guardian, though still on the mend, began to regain strength, often leading Keanu on short walks along a narrow trail that meandered through snow-dusted pines. During these walks, Keanu allowed himself to remember not only the pain of his loss but also the beauty that could emerge even in the harshest conditions. The isolation that had once defined his existence slowly faded into the background, replaced by a profound understanding that even in solitude, connections, fleeting or lasting, had the power to heal. Every gentle nudge from Guardian, every soft, tentative hop of the rabbits at the wildlife shelter, served as a reminder that life was a fragile tapestry woven from moments of despair and hope alike. One crisp morning, as the sun ascended with a promise of new beginnings, Keanu sat outside the cabin, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The memories of the fateful night, when the storm had raged and the cry of life had broken through the silence, were etched in his heart. It was on that night that he had rediscovered something invaluable, a sense of purpose that transcended the sorrow of the past. The animals he had rescued were not merely victims of circumstance. They were beacons, guiding him back to a world where compassion could conquer even the darkest of winters. Keanu's thoughts wandered to the concept of sacrifice, the silent, often unnoticed acts of bravery that could change the course of life. Guardian had risked everything for two lives so small and fragile, and in doing so, had reawakened in Keanu a desire to make a difference. That realization transformed his perspective on life. It was no longer about fleeing from pain or isolation. It was about embracing the possibility of renewal, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. In a heartfelt conversation with a local wildlife volunteer one afternoon, Keanu shared his experience. "There's a truth in every act of kindness," he said softly, "even when it comes from an unlikely source. Guardian taught me that sometimes, the smallest beings hold the greatest strength." The volunteer, touched by his sincerity, replied, "Your story is a reminder that hope can be found in the most unexpected places. It's in moments like these that we see the true meaning of resilience." And so, with each passing day, as the snow began to melt and the wildflowers timidly pushed through the thawing earth, Keanu Reeves found himself on a journey of healing, a journey where the memory of that bitter winter and the sacrifices made in its midst continued to inspire him. The cabin, once a symbol of isolation and sorrow, had been transformed into a sanctuary of hope and new beginnings. Months later, the seasons had shifted, and a gentle warmth replaced the harsh chill of winter. The landscape around the cabin was reborn, a vibrant mix of green meadows and blooming wildflowers, a living testament to nature's enduring resilience. Keanu, now a changed man, continued to live in the same cabin, but its walls were no longer cloaked in melancholy. Instead, every room resonated with quiet joy and the gentle hum of life. Guardian, ever faithful, roamed freely in the fields, a proud symbol of the extraordinary bond formed on that fateful night. The baby rabbits had grown into healthy creatures, and their playful antics at the local wildlife shelter became a source of delight for the community. Yet, for Keanu, the greatest reward was the inner peace he had found, a serenity born not from solitude, but from the shared experiences of compassion and love. In the soft light of an autumn afternoon, as Keanu sat by the window watching leaves swirl in the breeze, he reflected on his journey. He remembered the storm, the desperate cry for help, and the miraculous discovery that had reshaped his existence. It was in those moments of despair that he had rediscovered the beauty of connection, both with nature and with the tender souls that had come into his life. He picked up his journal and began to write, not just to document the events, but to capture the essence of hope and renewal. Sometimes, he wrote, the coldest nights yield the brightest dawns. When life seems at its bleakest, a small act of kindness can light the way to a new beginning. His words, filled with gratitude and resolve, were a testament to the transformative power of empathy. Keanu's story soon spread beyond the quiet confines of the mountains. Neighbors and travelers alike were touched by the tale of a man who had risked everything to save lives in the midst of a merciless storm. His example sparked conversations about the importance of compassion, inspiring others to seek out connections and to lend a hand, even when the path was fraught with uncertainty. In time, the cabin became a small center of community, where people would gather on chilly evenings to share stories, warm themselves by the fire, and remember that even in the darkest winters, the light of hope could guide them home. For Keanu, every face that smiled, every word of thanks, was a reminder that he had not only saved lives that night but had also reclaimed a part of his own soul. Looking back on that fateful night, Keanu realized that the mysterious groan in the storm had been a call not just for help, but for redemption. It was a call that had led him to Guardian, to the fragile rabbits, and ultimately, to the realization that life, no matter how battered, always carries within it the seeds of renewal. And so, as the golden hues of dusk settled over the newly awakened landscape, Keanu Reeves sat on his front porch, Guardian resting faithfully at his side. The silence of the mountains was no longer an enemy, but a gentle backdrop to a life filled with purpose and connection. The story of that stormy night, the rescue, and the unexpected bond between man and animal would forever remain etched in his heart, a reminder that even when all seems lost, hope can be found in the most unlikely places. Keanu Reeves' journey was one of transformation, a journey where isolation gave way to connection, and despair was slowly replaced by hope. The storm that had once symbolized the relentless forces of nature had also, in its fury, paved the way for an extraordinary encounter. Guardian, the brave dog who had shielded life with every ounce of its being, became a living emblem of sacrifice and love, while the fragile rabbit babies, hidden beneath the weight of the winter's snow, were a testament to the miracle of survival. In the end, it wasn't just about rescuing an animal from the cold. It was about rescuing a part of himself, a part that had been lost in the echo of silence and sorrow. The unexpected bond that formed that night had rekindled in him a belief that every life, no matter how small or fragile, had value. And in that belief, he found the strength to move forward, to embrace the dawn, and to rebuild a life that was once shrouded in loneliness. Keanu's story reminds us all that even in the depths of despair, the light of compassion and the courage to act can lead us to new beginnings. In the quiet moments of struggle, in the soft whispers of the winter wind, there lies an invitation to reach out, to care, and to ultimately transform not only the lives of others but our own.